look at this, for example. If you read it, right, this is supposed to be the world card and it's got a spelling mistake. Hi everyone, this is going to be a video on my 3 least favourite tarot decks, or the worst tarot decks for me personally. Now, this is not to bash any of the artists or the companies or the publishers that have worked very hard to create any of these decks. These are just my personal opinions. I have close to 70 different decks, and in all honesty, you know, there are some that I am more drawn to, or some that I will pick up more often than others for specific reasons. Now, you're probably looking at these 3 decks and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, the illustrations on the back of these cards are beautiful, and there's no denying that. They are very, very beautiful. I think the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous, but these are the 3 least used tarot decks from my collection, and I have really not used them very often in any of my readings on my channel. I've barely used them, one video if that. I have actually never used this particular deck in any of my readings. This one I know I've used a couple of times, this one I know I've used a couple of times as well, but this one I've never used. So I am going to be very much so going through that. Now, I will be honest, I don't even know the name of this particular deck. I know that sounds really awful, but I bought it on eBay a really long time ago and it came in this very standard box. I have no idea what it's called. I believe that it is a deck that a company in China pretty much ripped off and reproduced. So I really don't have very much information on this deck. It's very, very difficult for me to grasp all of these cards. I'm going to be 100% transparent with all of you because I want you to know that I'm being very, very honest. I usually, when I get a new tarot deck, I will sit there, I will learn all the meanings, I will try and interpret the cards as per the information provided by the booklets that usually come with the cards, and if there are none, then I will sit there and I will really meditate upon, and I will look at every single card and try and memorize them. With this one, I just couldn't do it. Like, there was something that just kept blocking me to connect with this particular deck, and I'll tell you why. I just feel like they're quite beautiful, right? They're so beautiful, but for some reason I just found it so difficult to learn each of these cards, and for some reason I just couldn't connect with this particular deck. Okay, so this is what the illustrations look like, and I do think they're really very, very beautiful. It's actually upside down. Yeah, but I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't. Now, I believe this one here is a 6 of Swords, but there's a lot of cards in here that are actually very, very difficult to figure out. So it's definitely a memory game, and it's definitely something I would have to very much so learn. I mean, these ones here, I mean, I could tell you what they are, but there are some definitely in this deck that are very, very difficult to memorize, and my memory is quite good, but for some reason I just cannot connect with this particular deck. It was hard. You guys, it was really hard for me. So I just, honestly, I really don't use this deck very often at all, and I just don't know why. I just can't seem to connect to it, and it's more of a personal thing than it is, you know, oh, the illustrations are terrible, I don't like them, you know. It's more of a personal thing, and this does happen with me. For example, I could tell you absolutely, you know, that is the 4 of Pentacles, but then there are some cards in here that you know, it's really, really hard, especially the fact that it didn't come with a book or anything like that, and the illustrations are a little bit more challenging to get. So, you know, for example, this is the Hermit. I believe this is the Empress, but I could be very wrong. But there are some in here, and it's interesting now because I can't even find them. There's some in here that are a little bit more challenging. For example, it's a little bit difficult to tell the difference between the Lovers and the 2 of Cups because the illustrations are quite similar. But, you know, it's a case of learning, but for some reason I just could not connect with this deck, and that is the main reason I haven't used it. I may actually start using it, but also it is a copycat deck, right, which is what a lot, well, oh gosh, I can't even speak right now, which is what happens quite often with tarot decks, is that, you know, companies in China start to reproduce them and sell them for really cheap prices, which I think is so unfair to all of the illustrations and sorry, not the illustrations, the illustrators and the companies that work so hard to really, you know, put this deck out there. So maybe it was my fault because I accidentally purchased this without even realizing it's not the real thing. It's also got the Chinese writing at the bottom. For some reason, I just cannot connect to this particular deck. I don't know what it is. It is so beautiful, right? It's so beautiful, but for me, I have to be able to connect to a deck, and I've connected to all of my decks except for these three that we see right here. Like, these are my least favorite ones. And I just seem to have a hard time with them. That is really what is going on. So we have this mosaic one, which would be my first one that I'm just not really a fan of. I have other tarot decks which I just would pick up more often than this, and that's just the reality of it. There are lots of incredible decks out there. There are so many of them, and if I was to do a reading for someone, there are other ones that I would pick up to do their reading than this one. There are so many great ones. For example, Rider-Waite, Golden Universal, Tattoo Tarot, After Tarot, Mystic Mondays, Tarot Made Easy, The Magic of Tarot, Neo Tarot. There's the Cosmic Woman Tarot, Kawaii Tarot, Everyday Tarot. There's the Golden Art Nouveau Tarot. There are so many that I would just reach and pick up with, you know, just out of the blue. This one would definitely be last on my list, unfortunately. So the second one is right here. So this is by The Works. So The Works is a company here in the UK. I don't know if they're international or global, I'm not really sure, but they have a store they have multiple stores in the UK. They have one where I live as well. And so I saw this. It came with a kit with a book and these cards. I will say that the illustrations in the back are beautiful. If you put this on, you know, the back of other cards, I would be so happy because I would use them, I feel, all the time, but unfortunately it is what is here. That is very disappointing. The actual card quality is very, like, the illustration is extremely blurry. I mean, I feel like you can see it a little bit better on camera, but I also feel like in person it's a completely different story. It's just so blurry, and I like the fact that, you know, you've got something that you can understand here. You can see that this is the Four of Pentacles, and it's not always that I need the illustrations to be like Rider-Waite, where you see that, okay, this is Four of Pentacles. It's just the fact that the quality is not that great. And also at the bottom here, then you have some key words and phrases, and it says here, money improvements, more coming your way. I just feel like for a deck like this, I feel like it's not necessary to have that, because this is not gonna mean that for every single question you ask, you know, especially if you're doing a love reading, or if you're asking a question for something else, you know, that isn't always going to relate. So I wish they didn't do that. You know, I wish they kind of just left that bit out, and it would definitely be a deck that I would reach for much more often, rather than having that, because that isn't going to make sense for every single question that you do ask. So that's one of the reasons, again, why I don't particularly go for this deck. I mean, this one here, I just can't seem to connect with it. This one here, it's more so the phrases at the bottom that sort of just you know, doesn't really make me want to pull it. So we've got Temperance here, and Temperance has so many meanings, and it depends, you know, the energies that you connect to or the questions that you ask. But then when you've got a phrase here that says money restrictions, testing the waters, it feels quite restricting, because it could be something completely different that goes with this particular card. So again, it's the phrases at the bottom that just kind of put me off grabbing this particular deck, especially when I am doing readings, is because I'm channeling during that time, and I'm getting messages also from spirit guides. I don't really need these messages at the bottom, because they're not always going to make sense for the question and, of course, the answer. So that is the reason why I don't really like this particular deck. I don't really reach for it very often, is because of the bottom of it. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the last deck which I have. So this one here is called the Japanese Myth Tarot. Again, the illustrations on the back of these are beautiful, absolutely beautiful, but it's the actual cards that I don't seem to reach for that often. I have used these a couple of times, these ones here, in pick a card readings, but I don't really reach for them, A, because they are extremely long, and doing a spread with them on screen is a little bit challenging, but I don't restrict myself just because of that. Again, it's a copycat deck. So this one here is not a copycat deck. This one is actually produced by the works, but this one here is a copycat deck where it's again a company in China that's just ripped off and reproduced the cards. So I don't really use this as often, because what I found with this deck is that there's repeating cards. That's right, there's repeating cards. Like, for example, we have the Four of Pentacles here. The Four of Pentacles will also most likely come up again somewhere in this deck with a different illustration. Now, I think that's quite a good idea, but again, not every card repeats. So it's really just quite confusing as to why there are two Four of Pentacles and then there's only like one, I don't know, Eight of Swords or something. It's quite confusing. I don't really understand it so much. I should have got the two copycats. Well, it's a copycat deck, but there's also some copied cards in here as well. Let me just find them. So we've got the Emperor, and I think we had the Emperor again. Let me just see. The illustrations themselves are beautiful. Like, if I show you an example of a card, look at that. Look at how nice that is, right? It's just kind of annoying that the actual cards, look at this, for example. If you read it, right, this is supposed to be the World card, and it's got a spelling mistake. So I don't use this deck. I really just don't, because I don't understand why there are so many random repeating cards. Like, why are there two of the same type of cards? And you know what? I'm going through this deck and I literally cannot find the repeats, which I think is just bizarre. So bizarre. Knight of Cups. I swear I just went through and had a Knight of Cups, right? Did I? Please. I want to show my audience. How so interesting. Like, I can't even find any of these repeating cards anymore, which is so strange. Two of Pentacles, King of Wands. Anyways, the point of this is that there's repeating cards in here. There you go. Ta-da! Okay, so you've got the Moon and the Moon. There's loads actually in here. It's just that when they're all shuffled up, it's quite difficult to find one and then to find the other. But yeah, so I've got Judgment, and I know there's a Judgment in here in this entire pile, but it's going to be hard for me to find it again. So I've got a Fool here as well, and I did go through a Fool in here as well. So yeah, it's just really bizarre and so strange why there is some that repeat and not all of them. I mean, it would be quite interesting if you had like two of each in a deck, and I think that the illustrations are really cool, but why is there two of the Moon but not necessarily like two of the Eight of Swords, for example? It just is very strange. And again, there's a spelling error as well. Now, this could be because it's a copycat deck, but what's really interesting is that you do have two very similar illustrations. So was it the original deck that had these two illustrations? I don't know. All I know is that I don't really reach for this deck for this very reason, is because the cards just seem to be very all over the place. I just can't seem to, again, connect to this particular deck or understand why these things are going on, if that makes any sense. So these are three of the decks that I just honestly don't use. I may use them here and there, but I really honestly just find myself not being able to connect to them as well as the other decks. And I mean, I have so many. I mentioned, you know, I have so many, right? So many decks that I would just reach for those more than I will for these three decks. So these would probably be my three worst decks that I do own, and ones that I honestly just wouldn't recommend to you. I think there are so many better ones, and I do have a video on my channel for, you know, my favourite tarot decks. So if you are interested, do check those out. And also I will be making a video on, you know, the best beginner tarot decks as well. So this is it, and if you'd like to win a free reading with me, do check out the description box below for more information, or if you wanted to book a private paid reading with me, that will also be down below as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any comments, let me know in the comment section below. And also, I do have my intention bracelets, which are on Etsy, so they are down below. They're there to remove obstacles and challenges from different areas of your life, so they will all be down below. Hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. And take care. Bye!